Hey everybody, welcome to Landscape Rescue. My name's Stuart Moore, and on today's episode, we are at one of my favorite places to shop for plants. This is Nixa Hardware, a local hardware store with an awesome garden center. We're gonna walk around, and my goal is to find some extreme value and hang out with my buddies and talk about plants. Let's go. So I was walking around Lowe's a couple days ago and ended up throwing away the footage for two different trips to Lowe's, one of which I found some great clearance. Unfortunately, my mic wasn't turned on. It didn't record for a little bit of it, and it's just very frustrating to have that sort of stuff happen, especially if it's a halfway decent video, because it takes time to go film those things. You got to drive to the place, blah, 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 blah. This is Thursday morning. I am going to keep my commitments to you guys and do Tuesdays and Thursdays. So this was kind of an emergency, but man, I'm so glad I came here. There is some good value here for sure. So one of the things that I wanted to show you guys, and you've heard me talk about these before, but this is the Pugster series. Well, this is Pugster Amethyst. It is priced at $21.84, and I would say this is probably a 2-gallon, a number 2. Now the great thing about a Pugster is it's sterile. So it's a sterile butterfly bush. It's a sterile Buddleia. So if you want to get knee deep in that Buddleia, you could use a Pugster and you don't have to compromise your moral fiber, right? You're not part of the problem. They also have Pugster Pinker, Pugster Blue. Pugster Blue is the one that I use the most of, obviously purple, right? Because I love the purples. Pugster Periwinkle, and I think there might be a Pugster White, but I'm not a fan of white butterfly bush, so I don't use those very often. But there's another dwarf butterfly bush that's sterile that does the same thing, but I don't think it has as pretty blooms, but the durability could be higher. That's Lo and Behold. Lo and Behold Purple Haze. There's also Lo and Behold Blue Chip Junior. These are a fantastic butterfly bush for durability, right? I've got a friend, her name's Johnny Floyd. She has a landscape company called Johnny Floyd Designs. Has built a very good reputation for herself. She knows her stuff. I always like to pick her brain about plants. She doesn't use the Pugster Blue. She uses Lo and Beholds, the Blue Chip. She likes those more. And my question is it because of durability? Because it's not because of blooms, right? The Pugster is thicker. It's more dense, where the Lo and Behold is more wispy. So you get a lot bigger, more beautiful blooms off of the Pugsters, but she doesn't have a durability issue with those. So the question that I have is if I can find some Lo and Behold on clearance, I might pick some of those up and test them out next to a Pugster so we can get a good comparison going. But if it's a durability issue, then the Lo and Behold would become my new favorite butterfly bush, because we have a hard time with longevity in butterfly bush in my zone. And it's hard to quantify because people are planting them at different times, but I feel like I can get about 3 years out of a Pugster, and then they don't come back the next year. It could be root rot, it could be a wet winter, but for the most part, for me, it's about 3 years. But that's a butterfly bush, and for $21.84, that's a really good deal, because they grow so fast. I've trimmed them, I've deadheaded them, and they have pushed new growth within 3 days. So within 3 days, I am seeing a healed wound and it's pushing new growth. I do have a tendency to feed my plants, so they have a little extra juice to get them through. That's some good value right there. Good bang for your buck. $21.84 is a tough pill to swallow. If you're getting 7 of them, I understand. But as far as entertainment in the garden, that's a good one. That's one of my plants. The second plant, I am always gonna pick this as my go-tos, is Hardy Hibiscus. Hardy Hibiscus are gonna want a different environment than the Pugsters. What I found is, irrigation-wise, if I can water with a 1 gallon an hour emitter on a Pugster or a 2 gallon an hour emitter on a Pugster, maybe that's my front row. My middle tier or my last tier is going, depending on the Hardy Hibiscus, is going to be, maybe I'm going to use a 5 gallon an hour emitter on those. So you're dialing in your landscaping based on the need of each individual plant, and a drip emitter with a little hose attached to it where you can run to each one of those plants is going to help you do that. French vanilla, summerific French vanilla, a white with a pink center, and this one is priced at $24.74, which is right there with where you would find a wholesale price for these. This is open to the public. It's attached to a very successful hardware store. They're part of that Ace Hardware buying group when it comes to nursery products, so they have a lot of buying power and they do very well with their pricing. Instead of smacking you across the face with high margins, they don't do that. They focus on volume, and it's a pretty decent place to shop for plants. A lot of the contractors that I run into like to shop here. The prices are very competitive. A good combination for Hardy Hibiscus is going to be a Panicle hydrangea. Panicle hydrangeas like a more moist soil. Hydrangea meaning water vessel in Latin. They're going to like the agua. See, I say this stuff over and over and over again in hopes that, I can put it on a t-shirt one day and you guys will buy it because you hear it so much. I'm just joking. I say it over and over and over again to get that out into the world, because I think a lot of the problems we have with hydrangeas is people aren't giving them enough water. Same thing with hostas. Hardy Hibiscus is so versatile. It blooms for such a long period of time in the summer that it's hard not to say that this is a good value for the money. Our big value propositions here are Hardy Hibiscus and butterfly bush. Those are two big ones. And Hardy Hibiscus, again, come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. This one is airbrush effect. So it's pink, and then it's got darker pink tips. So it looks like it's fading to a darker pink as that color works its way to the outside of the petal. Very pretty. This is $16.84 for a 1 gallon. Not gonna say that's a great deal, but let's learn a little bit more about them. 4 foot tall and 4 foot wide. So I would say it would just be right there with the standard big boys, right? Let's check out this summerific French vanilla, which was this one here. Obviously I'm gonna put pictures up, so that was kind of silly. And 42 to 48 inches, so another big boy. I feel like they do really well planted in combination with each other. The big ones, right? You can let them kind of fight it out a little bit. I don't necessarily think that I need to give them a whole lot of room, but they will get a lot bushier if you do that. Another really good value bang for your buck. I like this, and it's not necessarily bloom time. I feel like they bloom a long time, but I feel like more it's like the buds are swollen and giving me some color, so I get good value out of the bud before it opens to where it can get pollinated. So, and that's St. John's wort. There's a lot of different varieties of St. John's wort. This one right here is blue velvet, which has a bluer tinge to the leaves, a little bit smaller flowers. I was at Lowe's yesterday and the day before. Remember, I had 2 videos that went bad on me. And I saw a purple leafed variety of St. John's wort, which was really, really pretty. Purple and yellow, right? How did I not just fall on the floor and have a fit? I don't have a place to put one yet. So that is St. John's wort. I really like how the buds will swell more so on some other varieties of, is it sunburst? It almost looks like the yolk of an egg as it's just sitting there hanging there, and then pops open and now it looks like a flower. You get a lot of value. Any plant that has a attractive bud and starts coloring up before it opens up is going to give you good bang for your buck. Crab apples do that, right? Anytime I can get a berry that has a different color than the foliage of the leaf gives me good value. Crab apples are also good for that. So I would say a crab apple tree-wise would be a good, would be good value. They do come with their fair share of problems, like anything. You don't want to plant one by a sidewalk because those little tiny apples will fall on the sidewalk and people will smash them into the sidewalk. So you want to make sure you have a big bed that can absorb those little tiny apples and allow time for the birds to come out and eat them, because they do. So it does feed wildlife, but it is kind of a mess. Another great plant that I'm absolutely in love with, that does very well for me, and I feel like I get a lot of bang for my buck, is the Dark Knight Caryopteris, or Bluebeard. It's not going to get huge, so if you're looking for something to fill a big space, Caryopteris is, this Black Knight especially, a 2x2, but would be a good middle tier, or yeah, I would say middle tier. So if I'm doing a 5 tier, this might be 2, right? Or this might be number 3. So I can build a little bit more than that, but depends on the size of your bed. I like huge flower beds so I can encompass a lot of fullness and a lot of layers, because I feel like it adds more character to the bed, and I can create more interest with more depth. But if you're just running a single line, or maybe a 2-tier design, these are great for that, especially if you have a low window. The reason I say that this is a lot of bang for your buck is because of the amount of entertainment that I get from Caryopteris. Pollinators absolutely love this plant. I don't know if there's sprinkled black tar heroin on it at the nursery. I don't know what's going on, but pollinators go nuts. You have one of these in full bloom, you unload them off of the trailer and you set them in the customer's yard, getting ready to go lay the plants out for the guys. When you go back to the trailer to get more and come back, you're what, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, there's already pollinators on it. I'm telling you, do that experiment. It cracks me up. If you buy one of these and it's blooming, set it out and time how long it takes for pollinators to find it. They find it fast, like absurdly fast, around here anyway. But we don't have any problems with pollinators. Especially in my yard, it's nuts. But I'm just talking about random jobs in some neighborhood. There's pollinators everywhere, bumblebees everywhere. That's Caryopteris. I think you would really like a Caryopteris if you gave it a try. So just think Bluebeard, and obviously we'll have some slides to show you. Now these are in a Monrovia pot and they're 3474. Dark Knight Caryopteris is not a patented variety. I've gotten that from generic nursery or generic growers before that literally specialize in non-patented stuff, and I've gotten the Dark Knight before. The good thing about getting them from Monrovia is they're going to be grown in real well, where sometimes the stuff that I would get from other growers wasn't grown in as well, and they would suffer because they just did not have the root system to be able to handle sitting in a garden center for a couple weeks. But it was something that I always carried. I always had Caryopteris on hand. What a great plant. I don't want to feel like I'm beating a dead horse, because I think that would annoy me if I was watching this video, and I don't want to talk about the same thing over and over and over again. But we're coming up on Panicle hydrangeas, okay? Because I wanted to do a specific video for bang for your buck, full sun type of plants. Now this is the tiny quickfire, and we've talked about it before, but it's one of those panicles that doesn't lay down on me. I can use it in a lot of shade. It's kind of my go-to, a substitute for azaleas, right? When we're talking about the same kind of light conditions, morning sun, shielded from the hot afternoon, I'll put a little quickfire in there. Now this is the tiny quickfire. And tiny quickfire is more reliably going to stay small. So 1.5 to 3 feet tall and wide, where little quickfires will sometimes get to 4 feet, especially if they're in full sun and they're very happy, which most of my Panicle hydrangeas, just based on how I water, and I like to put them in full sun, are very happy. So that is one of the things. Bang for your buck. These bloom from June all the way into first frost. They bloom on new growth, so I don't have to worry about when or how I prune them. I've pruned them all the way down to 8 inches and watched them get to about 3x3 that year once they're established. When I say they're established, once they're about 5 years old, you can't really kill this thing unless you just don't water it. Oh, they've got a Pinky Winky Prime. That is a new one. Pinky Winky Prime for $39.84. And let's read a little bit about this. Ooh, yep, it's just the same size as a regular Pinky Winky. 6 to 9 feet tall. These are big, but it's got a looser panicle. I wonder what the Prime does for us. And I'm not gonna speculate. We're just gonna put it up on a slide so you guys can see. So this is what it says. Hydrangea Pinky Winky Prime combines the beauty and reliability of the original with bigger, fuller flowers that age to an extra vivid pink. Sturdy stems keep the bloom upright all summer. So that's one of the issues with Panicle hydrangeas, is that they fill up with water and they fall down. The Pinky Winky, from the view of the picture, looks like a more open panicle than, say, the Limelight series. I don't really feel like the Limelight Prime really impresses me that much. It did have a little stiffer stem than the regular Limelight, but it didn't get as big as the regular Limelight. So if I was going to go with if I wanted a big boy, right? So I want a 9-foot Panicle hydrangea for seasonal privacy, I would go with the Firelight, because mine has not laid down and it's right by a gutter, right? And I don't have the greatest gutters in the world, as you guys have seen in previous videos. Where I can put a European hydrangea, I can usually put a Panicle hydrangea. Okay, so any of the other hydrangeas that bloom on old growth, I can typically put a Panicle. So Linda Vader had a short that just popped up on my feed, so I looked at it, and she was talking about she will never buy a hydrangea that doesn't bloom on new growth. I think I posted that video link in the Facebook group, because I think it's very telling when somebody that's that smart about plants, who has been doing it that long, is saying something like, I'm not doing a European hydrangea unless it blooms on new growth. I will not do it. It's too much pain and suffering, and I don't deserve it. That's what she's saying, and I appreciate that. I like content creators in the plant space that take a stand for something. I'm gonna throw a caveat in there. When they're willing to die on a hill based on like hogwash and silly opinion, that's not, I don't really appreciate that. But when she says never, I like how poignant the title was, don't buy any other hydrangea than these. It's taken a stand, because she doesn't have an agenda, right? I can't picture that lady really having, I've heard people not enjoy her content as much because they think she's a little haughty. If you ask me, she is a little haughty. I just like real content. We've been talking a lot about shrubs, and I think shrubs do a really good job of giving us a lot of bang for our buck. And they need to, because they're more expensive. And it really depends on where you're getting your plants from. It's subjective, right? Good value is subjective. When I buy 20 East Friesland salvia in a 2-gallon pot for $28, I bought them for $1 a piece. That is amazing value. Even though they've only been blooming for about 2 weeks and I'm already ready to cut them back because they're falling over, that's still good value to me. That is still good value. Like I said, that's subjective. A lot of am I going to get value out of a plant is where am I placing it in my landscape? What tier is that going to be in? I got a bunch of free hostas that run across the backside of that big bed up front, and they give me amazing value because they fill up that space. It doesn't look empty. There's a sense of depth there. I put myself in somebody's shoes that's seeing that flower bed for the first time, and they kind of know something's back there. You know, what is it back there? I know it's full. I know there's a plant back there, but I'm kind of surprising that person. So try to do that for yourself when it comes to design. Give yourself a little surprise where maybe you have to move around a little bit to see something, and involve yourself with a little bit of dynamics, even though you know it's there and you know what it is. But it's fun to imagine seeing a flower bed for the first time that you designed, what would be going through somebody's head. When we talk about perennials, echinacea is big bang for your buck. If you can get them on a clearance rack for $3 or $4, even better. Same thing with black-eyed Susans. They take a while to get going. Like my echinacea in the front yard are just now starting to kind of wake up and produce a flower, right? My autumn colors rudbeckia are just slug bait right now until it warms up. You start getting some heat to them. Irish eyes, autumn colors, black-eyed Susans, they're all kind of doing the same thing for me right now. Nothing. They're growing, but we haven't gotten those long, hot days that they're really gonna thrive in. that's what I wanted to focus on. Is it's subjective. I can have a really awesome thumbnail and a really awesome title, even though I'm not known for either one of those things. Bang for my buck doesn't necessarily always mean that something is blooming for a long time. Sometimes it is. It's easy sometimes to fall into that, where something's blooming for a long time, therefore it gives me good value. But the initial purchase price has got something to say about it. And, you know, what does it add to my space? That's something else to add. So let's keep that in mind. They've got these little irises in a 4-inch pot for $7. That's a little too rich for my blood. I would like some irises. I've got one spot where I'm like, boy, it'd be perfect to pop some irises in there. So let me tell you about the clearance that I got at Lowe's yesterday. I got 2. You guys are gonna kill me for not putting this on a video, but I apologize. I got 2 Grace and Grit white 2-gallon roses. So there was 2 of them for 12 bucks a piece. So I took both of those. I got one of those orange glow knockout roses. I got one of those for $25. Those were full price. Then I got 3 different types of clematis to put on that fence for $7 a piece. One was a Monrovia. It was $12 because it was originally $24. I got that half off. So just remember, and I did shoot this video, I promise. It just did not, the mic was turned off. You couldn't hear what I was saying. It was super busy in there, so I was whispering a lot. And without the mic, it was pointless. It was a pointless video for me to try to produce. I wouldn't have been able to do it. When I talk about clematis going on sale, I don't know if you remember a previous video where I was making fun of that little tiny clematis that had the little gate around it, and it was kind of like in that square 2-quart pot, and I was complaining about it. Those went on sale and they ended up being $7. Well, now it's a good value, right? Because I don't want to pay for the stupid pot. I don't want to pay for the dumb little trellis. None of that is going to do me any good. When I got them for $7, I grabbed 3 of them. And then I've got this really cool fuchsia colored one, a white candy stripe, like I've got behind the shed. I got another one of those. I can't remember. But anyway, we'll be planting those and I'll go over it with you. But guys, this was a great video. I had a lot of fun. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. That's always very, very important, especially when I'm like, oh, I really don't like this video or something like that. I really like shooting them, but then when I go in and start editing them, I don't really like them as much. When I start getting you guys' comments, and everybody is so great, I put my subscribers up against anybody else's. Even when only half of you guys show up for these crappy videos, I still appreciate it. So thank you very much. My name's Stuart Moore. This is Landscape Rescue. Thank you for letting me into your home to talk about plants.